right, let me see if I can get this done because I got someplace I got to be tonight. So right now, the fantasy quarterback MVP is going to be Josh Dobbs, and I'll explain this. So this is going to be my quarterback value rankings. So again, to start off with this channel, don't listen to anything I say. This is not legal advice, and the first rule of this channel is we do not talk about this channel. So moving forward, and I got the stats to kind of break this up. So last year, this is last year's total points for fantasy scoring for quarterbacks. And what you're paying for with your high-end elite quarterbacks or sub-elite quarterbacks is this differential between the top three guys, last year being Hurts, Allen, and Mahomes. And that gives you like 4 or 5 points a game more than the next tier. Because these guys are nimbly bimbly or they have high volume passing offenses, more the case of Mahomes. This year, Mahomes is a little bit more of a rusher, and we'll get to that. And then you see Joe Burrow as the top high volume passer at 21.9 points a game. Now, the interesting thing, and I think I should leave this up, is Davis Webb played one game last year for the Giants, and he still would have finished, well, he did finish as the fantasy quarterback 5 overall when it comes to points per game. And the interesting thing behind that is he only threw for 168 yards and 1 touchdown, but he also had 6 carries for 41 yards and 1 touchdown. So that's the way that you get there is through this rushing efficiency, and the passing stuff is the gravy, unless, again, the high volume passing offense. So moving forward, I have this Fantasy Pros stuff up. I don't go to Fantasy Pros very often. I kind of just eyeball things now, like I've been saying. But this is what they're talking about in terms of pace of play. And pace of play is important for all players, in particular the elite type quarterbacks, because, again, opportunity is king in fantasy football. I have this written down. And we want great players on okay offenses, because they're opportunity funnels. So more pace of play, more plays, more efficiency is going to equal more opportunity to score points. And if the quarterback is the center of all that, he has the most ability to score points. And if he's a runner passer, he can get us there however he needs to get us there, because we don't care how the sausage is made sometimes, but he can do it. And that's kind of what we're looking for with a quarterback. So when you're asking, like, well, why would Josh Dobbs be the fantasy MVP at quarterback this year? Well, it's because right here in this article, if I can go hunt it down for you guys, showing how unprepared I am. The notes for week 5 is Arizona's offense is good, ? The Cardinals ranked 9th in CER, which is their stupid, composite whatever ranking, above teams like Detroit, Minnesota, Cincinnati. ECR isn't on an island with this either. Arizona ranks 6 overall, and this is like points, something, whatever. But 22nd in points per game. This is a turnaround, is unbelievable. They were in the bottom 5 last year and added head coach. So this is the difference of good coaching, basically what it's going to finish with. So anyway, going back to why Josh Dobbs is the fantasy MVP, because the other guy who was going to be the fantasy MVP at quarterback with Anthony Richardson, but you paid for him. And if you haven't paid anything for Josh Dobbs, then that's the guy who's going to win it for you. And again, I have the facts and the stats to back this all up. So right now, in my let me pull this up so I can be staring at the right thing on my other screen. Right now, my overall number 1 elite quarterback is Justin Herbert. Again, high volume passing offense. And he was nimbly bimbly with the 2 rushing touchdowns in week 4 and 1 rushing touchdown in week 1. Sometimes I don't care how the sausage is made. He's getting me there. That's all I care about. Moving on to the number 2 guy in my in the elite tier, the second quarterback overall, it's Anthony Richardson. And again, I don't need to know how the sausage is made. He's going to figure out a way to get me there. Now, do I think Jonathan Taylor is going to hurt him a little bit? I don't know. That's the long and short of that. They could complement each other. Jonathan Taylor might cannibalize the rushing touchdowns from Anthony Richardson, which would move him out. But this is a projection of how I would view him going forward. If someone comes knocking to buy Anthony Richardson, I would be hard-pressed to say that you should give them anything for him. The differential that he would be able to get you to put you into that next tier of quarterbacks from a week-to-week standpoint is way too high to give up, and he'll probably be able to get you there either through the air and on the ground. And then the last guy in this tier, I have Jalen Hurts, and the reason why I would keep Hurts in the elite tier is, he's in a good offense, and he's going to find a way to get you there. And he's kind of done the thing where he's gotten you there different ways this year. And that's kind of what I like to see. So throwing out the first game against New England, which would give me pause. I almost put him in the sub-elite category, but I didn't because I think he's still very, very valuable with all the weapons he has around him. Now, the reason why I'm going to have Josh Allen in that sub-elite tier as quarterback 4 overall is because, as I pointed out in week 1, he's a turnover machine. And even though he can control himself on certain weeks, like it will be predictive that he will have another turnover machine outcome and probably cost you a week. And give you a sub 40-degree day. He does it every year. And again, it should be predictive at this point that he's going to have some bad weeks. Moving on to the next guy, Lamar Jackson. And I really struggled to not put him in the top category, the elite category. The reason why I didn't is I just don't think that they're going to need him to do Lamar Jackson things all the time. Week 1 with the 7.56, only 169 yards passing and 38 yards on the ground. Some of the stuff, like, guys are going to have bad weeks. Normally when I do my projections at the beginning of the year, I treat a bad week the same as 1 week miss for injury to project them, because it doesn't matter to me. Like, things are going to happen. And the main thing with the Ravens is their schedule. It kind of makes me think that they're not going to have to unleash a lot of Lamar Jackson. That's why I have him as far down as I have. And then the final guy in the sub-elite category would be Patrick Mahomes. And some people might think this is a hot take. Well, first of all, he's been getting there a lot more on the ground than he has in the past. And that's the reason why I have him not in the elite category, is because I have some serious questions about the Kansas City offense going forward and how it's going to function. Those wide receivers and how they're using the wide receivers. And maybe even a little bit that Isaiah Pacheco is, maybe a little bit more valuable player than I actually thought he was when I did the running back ranking. So it's a good thing that people want to see this stuff. Makes me reevaluate how I see things. So that's why I would have Patrick Mahomes right now as quarterback 6 overall, because again, if I'm starting to worry about the wide receivers, there's going to be a game coming up where it bites us, and it already kind of bit us with the Jets game. Again, but that's a little bit predictive because the Jets are supposed to have an elite defense. Okay, so now this is what I would call my don't overthink it quarterback ones. Tua, high volume passing offense, great pace of play, good efficiency. Like, this is what he's going to do. I would probably have moved him down a little bit because I think that the running backs are going to vulture some of his work. But that's about the only reason why I would have him down this low. Like, probably going to have to deal with some 40-degree days, but he's going to get you there most of the time because of just how the offense is. And I had these rankings set up before Chase Claypool showed up, and that might have actually been something that, like, I would flirt with moving him up into the sub-elite category if Claypool is that big body bully on the X. That would be something interesting I could think about in the future. So again, the next category, and this was done after the Thursday night game with Justin Fields. Again, fantasy values fluctuate from game to game. They should, because now we have more information. And Justin Fields would have gone from probably like a low-end quarterback 1 to just set them and know that you're going to get some bad weeks and know that you're going to get some league winner weeks. The main thing with Justin Fields is I don't know how predictive certain things are going to be. I have actually written down you're gambling with him, but fantasy is kind of gambling. The coaches, I just don't know if they're going to give him enough design runs to get him out of the hole because they want him to be a real NFL quarterback, and I don't know why they're trying to do that. If he just had the rushing floor week to week, it wouldn't matter what the rest of him did. And I should have talked about this earlier. Let me go back to my notes. So I have this written down. 100 yards passing is equal to 40 yards rushing. 3 touchdown passes equal to 2 touchdown passes. So rushing touchdowns are actually better to get than passing touchdowns because, like what I showed with Davis Webb back here, and I'll pull up good old Davis Webb again. Davis Webb had that 1 rushing touchdown. And if you could predict that every week that a quarterback's going to have a rushing touchdown, that ridiculous floor just makes the passing work. Like, he doesn't have to be a very good passer. He can be a game manager. He can be Zach Wilson. We're going to talk about Zach Wilson here in a little bit. He can be Zach Wilson as long as he can get it done a little bit on the ground, and he's the de facto goal line running back for his team. So that's what we're kind of looking at. And I actually have that written down, the rushing quarterbacks, as long as they're the team's de facto goal line back, that's what we're looking for with some of these guys. So the hybrid running back, quarterback, running quarterback, throwing quarterback hybrid, those are the guys that are going to give us the best ability to get us there from a fantasy perspective, because I don't care about if the team wins or loses. I don't care about what the stats are necessarily. I care about what the box, what the point total is in my fantasy lineup, right? That's what we're here for. So moving forward from Justin Fields to the next guy on the just set it and forget it list is Kirk Cousins. And again, this has to do with just being in a high volume passing offense. He's going to have Kirk Cousins weeks. That's why he's down this low, quarterback 9 overall. But he's also got attached to Justin Jefferson, and he's just going to have that high volume, pretty safe floor, a few spike weeks, going to probably break your heart a couple times. But again, that's where he was going about quarterback 9s in the draft, and if you took him, you're getting exactly what you paid for. So the next tier to talk about at the end of the quarterback 1 class, and I had to move up Josh Dobbs here, is he's some way, shape, or form getting it done enough in the passing game. And when I talked about Davis Webb, as long as he can have this consistent rushing floor week to week, it's really not going to matter as much of how good or how bad the Cardinals are in the passing game. Again, if he can get about 150 yards passing and 1 touchdown to go with about 40 to 50 yards rushing, he's going to get you there week to week. And then he's going to fall in the end zone because that high of rushing volume is going to translate in the goal line. And then again, with high pace of play, that efficiency is going to give him more opportunity to actually throw touchdown passes. So as long as the turnovers don't exist and the rushing work stays there, like, you got this really sneaky quarterback 1. And it's not a hot take for me to make him a low end quarterback 1 right now. It's actually a hot take that I didn't make him higher compared to where he's functioning relative to some of the other guys out there, especially with that rushing floor that he didn't have week 1, which is part of the reason why, it hurt him. But the other reason why in week 1 it hurts him is because he had 2 lost fumbles. So moving on to this tier of low end quarterback 1s is Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to be really up and down, not just from the rushing work, but from the passing work. So combined, he's probably going to get you there, but it's never going to be this massive spike week that some of the other top tier quarterbacks can give you. And then I have Brock Purdy, and he's, again, probably to say the opposite. Brock Purdy is going to be a relatively safe floor guy. He's going to be limited with his ceiling because he's never going to pop, but he's got so many tools week to week that it's going to be hard to never see him not get there. And he takes care of the football. He's just, he's better than a game manager, but he doesn't make a lot of turnovers. That's kind of what we're looking at from the fantasy perspective. So if I just have Brock Purdy and I have a really nice lineup behind him, I know I'm going to get my 15 to 20 points, and I'm going to be okay with that because I don't need him to give me a disproportionate positional advantage for me to win my week. And the last guy that I moved up into this category is CJ Stroud right now. And again, this is a little bit more of a reach, but again, this is the high pace of play going back to the fantasy pros article. You see with Houston Texans, this is the second time in 3 weeks I've highlighted the Texans, which feels like a minor miracle. Basically, he's talking about like high pace of play, teams projected for high snap counts. So like, again, if we know that they're going to have a lot of snaps, then that projects to more opportunity for a quarterback to throw passes, more a possibility for touchdown passes. So you just got to put him there and bury the lead, because I am going to talk a little bit about Gardner Minshew going on. But like, I wanted to put CJ Stroud in the high-end screamer category, but the pace of play is going to keep him as a low-end quarterback 1, and there's just enough nimbly-bimbly there, the possibility that he could fall into an end zone and get you there a different way. So he should probably be a weekly start in this case, and I might not have to worry about streaming him. So in the next tier of guys, this is my high-end streamers, my quarterback 2s, to bury a lead. There's Kenny Pickett. So to start off this tier, I would have Jordan Love, and this is all has to do with low pace of play. So even though he's been really consistent so far when it comes to getting my touchdowns and a little bit of rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, the reality of it is, if the Packers continue to be a low pace of plays teams, he's going to lose out on that ability. It's going to become more and more of a gamble that he can't get there because he's just not going to have the 10 to 20 extra plays a week to throw a touchdown pass or to scramble around. And that's going to limit him. But right now, like, if he's getting you there, he's getting you there. And that's all that really matters sometimes from a fantasy perspective of not worrying about how the sausage is made. The next guy on this list, it's the same thing. There's a higher pace of play for the Commanders, the Redskins. That's why Sam Howell would be here. I'm not quite ready to anoint him as a weekly starter. He's showing some things that would make me go like I could get away with it. But again, the meta should be to carry two quarterbacks and maybe do a little bit of matchup shopping and knowing that maybe some of these guys are riskier plays week to week, because a main component of fantasy football is just worrying about winning weeks. I was just texting one of my league my co-managers. We're trying to get a trade done, and one of the things that we were looking at with getting the trade done is we're sending a piece in the trade that has a good matchup, and we might actually be downgrading our ability to win the week to get the trade done. And that's something we have to take into account. So a guy like Sam Howell, there may be a little bit of I have to be matchup dependent with a guy like this, knowing that if I play him in the right matchup, I can get about 20 points relative to some of the other guys on the list. Daniel Jones, and the only reason why Daniel Jones is this far down the list is because his schedule this year is brutal. It's something I really didn't take into account, and it just shows how, like, the stuff that you miss on. I have to look at this next year. Part of the reason why I don't look at week-to-week matchups in the preseason is sometimes teams that we thought were going to be good are going to be bad, and sometimes teams that we thought were going to be bad are going to be good. And that's what I'm looking at with Daniel Jones. It's really hard to predict ahead of time that schedule to start the season was going to be as brutal as it was, and he got it done in week 2 against the Cardinals. But again, this is a guy that can give you that nimbly bimbly. That's how he's been able to keep his stat lines alive, is rushing around. And there's probably a chance of a higher passing ceiling down the line once Saquon comes back and they are running the offense that's designed for him to be a little bit more RPO and running, so he can get deeper shots down the field instead of just like sitting there and trying to get eaten alive by a bad offensive line. But he is a streamer, and I don't think I would necessarily, like, Miami could happen. I don't know when I would roll him out. I was looking at the schedule. I probably wouldn't try and stream him until week 9 against the Raiders at this point. This is really low for a guy that was projected to be a starting quarterback in fantasy this year, QB1, Trevor Lawrence. And again, like, there's enough problems, and he hasn't put it up. I don't see a week where he's going to put it together and have the rushing yards carry him through a bad passing week, or the passing yards to carry him through a limited rushing week. He's just going to be middling. And that's, trying to plan for a lot of 40-degree days. There's probably better guys to do that with, like, Brock Purdy, than worrying about the possibility of the Jaguars offense not being good that week, because they haven't been good. The 49ers have. That's why I would have a guy like Trevor Lawrence down here and a guy like Brock Purdy up higher. Matt Stafford, a little surprising to me that I have him this low, and there's actually 2 reasons behind him. But one of them is the fantasy MVP at this point, Kyren Williams, vulturing touchdowns away from Matt Stafford. Those 5 rushing touchdowns that Kyren Williams has don't go to Matthew Stafford. The passing volumes there, he leads the league, I think, in pass attempts. I don't remember off the top of my head. He's high in passing yardage. He's just not getting the touchdown passes because they're going someplace else. So when and if those passing touchdowns come, he's going to move really high up the list because of the Rams' pace of play and the high volume passing offense. And I bet that could be as soon as this week, where I'd have him there. And the next guy in this list of high-end quarterback streamers is Geno Smith. And this is another situation where it's a really good offense, but it may not be a Geno Smith week. It could be a Kenneth Walker week. And that's kind of what you're going to get into with some of these guys, where it's just like, the team doesn't need the guy to put him on his back. And again, the best situation is a great player on an okay offense, because, if it was Geno Smith and there was no Kenneth Walker, it would be Geno Smith every week putting it up. Let's see, moving forward, Baker Mayfield, Probably could have gone a little higher with Baker May, but again, I don't trust the guy. Probably none of us do. The wheels are going to probably come off, but when it comes to basically consistency so far, like basically 240-degree days, one week winner and one loser week. There's tougher guys to roll out there than what he's put out so far. He's got weapons. It's just a matter of whether or not you would trust him in any given week. And from a schedule standpoint, there are games that I would probably think about rolling him out, but I don't know if I would ever trust him to be a starter. Same thing with Russell Wilson. The rushing yards just haven't been there. They were there in week 2. This is just a bad situation in general. I don't know if I would ever trust it. He probably should be higher based off of his fantasy performances, but how bad the defense is, that actually should help him, would probably move him up. But again, I just think the wheels are going to come off on this. There's no analytics behind this. This is like my gut where I would rank him. And then I have Dak Prescott below him, kind of, for the opposite reason, where Dak is maybe not going to ever be needed. They can get it done with Tony Pollard. They can get it done with his defense. And you have to project a game, even though they have them coming up, where Dak has to put the team on his back and win on the ground. This is something that he hasn't done since he broke his ankle, is be as consistent on the ground to give me the floor and to just put up this 300 or 400 yard game with multiple touchdowns. I just don't know if it'll happen. If you don't see it against the Chargers and the Rams and the Eagles, it's just not going to be there. And those would be the weeks that I would look at streaming him. After that, like maybe Miami in the fantasy semis, you're rolling him out, maybe the beginning of the week. But again, teams with good defenses are also tough. The best case situation would be a good offense against a good defense, playing a good offense, playing a good defense. I don't know if that's always going to happen. And I can kind of guess that they're just going to go, hey, Dak, manage the game. Finishing this off, this is Jared Goff. Good offense, good defense. David Montgomery hasn't thrown touchdown passes, no rushing upside. Pretty simple. And to finish this tier off of actual like streamers, low end streamers, I had a break. Sorry, I didn't bring this up. The break would be between Matt Stafford and Geno Smith, between high-end streamer quarterback 2s and low-end streamer quarterback 2s. So I would still have Kenny Pickett in this category. He is supposed to play this Sunday. And the reason why I would have him in this category is even last year he was nimbly-bimbly. I don't know how mobile he's going to be with the injury, but he's still gotten it relatively done with these pedestrian days, of 200 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 200 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. And he may have gotten you there against Houston if he didn't get injured. So he's still on the low end of being able to know that you're going to get a week out of him, a fantasy relevant week, even though the ceiling is going to be really capped. And then the final tier that I have to bury the lead, the final tier that I have is just guys that are non-predictive at this point in the season. And one of the things I talked about being cute when it comes to streaming is Zach Wilson going up against Denver, coming off of how he finished the KC game. And part of the reason why I can talk about that is Zach Wilson coming out of college was a scrambler. There is going to be some rushing upside out of him. So if he can get to the Davis Webb, 40 yards rushing and a rushing touchdown to go with about 140, 150 yards passing and another touchdown, not only is Zach Wilson startable, or not only is he streamable, he's startable week to week going forward. So that's why I would have him at the top of this list at this point, because as relative to some of the other guys down here, he's going to have potentially the highest ceiling when it comes to or floor when it comes to rushing work. And then I actually have Joe Burrow below Zach Wilson. I probably would move him up because of Joe Burrow saying he feels good and he's practicing and all that stuff. But at this point, with what he's put out, you have basically 3 non-fantasy relevant weeks. They're going to lose you the week, sub 40-degree days that Joe Burrow has put out, and 1 40-degree day to go along with this. I just would not feel, I would feel more comfortable rolling Zach Wilson out against Denver than I would rolling Joe Burrow out against Arizona. And then below him, I have Desmond Ridder. And again, this is a part of the reason why I would have Desmond Ridder this high is the possibility of rushing upside, not the passing stats at all. It's just, there's a possibility of running. And as I've talked about before, like the rushing upside for a quarterback, that floor is so important for you to be able to win for you to be able to win your week. That's why I would have them. These guys that have any ability to run around have to be ranked higher. Again, that's why I would not have Jimmy Garoppolo here. Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G has been fringe starting quarterback before. I just have no idea what's going on. He practices fully, cleared the protocol, whatever. I just don't know if there's enough floor or ceiling to roll him out and feel comfortable about it at this rate. Same thing with Derek Carr. This has nothing to do with how good a quarterback these are. It has everything to do with, like, do I trust them enough to get me a 40-degree day or better? And I don't. And you can see that from his passing lines, especially after they rolled him out last week. Ryan Tannehill has to be down here also. He's had one fantasy relevant week so far, but otherwise, like, this is going to be a high volume rushing attack that's slow pace of play, very low efficiency. And I think at his age, at 35, he no longer has the rushing upside. I actually rolled him out for a season as my starting quarterback, but that was like 5 years ago at this point. So that rushing upside that was there is kind of gone. And then you have Mac Jones. And after week one, Mac Jones was on the radar to be either a streamable guy or a fringe QB1, and it's just fallen off. That offense is so bad that I would want nothing to do with any of the players there, period. And then at the bottom of the list for the quarterbacks, the starting quarterbacks in the NFL is Bryce Young. And there's no downfield shots. There's very poor coaching, creative play calling. This is the guy that I would have the least faith him rolling out there. There's no rushing upside. There's basically nothing. So everybody else would be ahead of him. And the reason why I did this tier, just to show what I would be looking for when it comes to either streaming a guy or valuing the top tier guys, going from the top to the bottom, to be able to understand the difference between what makes guys tick. And finally, I do have Gardner Minshew. And the reason why I have Gardner Minshew pulled up is because to understand what you're trying to get out of a streamer, Gardner Minshew still has a little nimbly bimbly in him. He's got a lot of weapons around him. Understanding that against Baltimore, you could roll a guy like this out and know that he's going to at least salvage your week. And some of the other guys in this tier, your Bryce Youngs, your Mac Jones, your Desmond Ritters, you can't even predict that they're going to give you a 40-degree day. And having some of those guys that you can just throw into your starting lineup and go, hey, I'm going to have that puncher's chest because this guy's going to give me about 15 points and I can move on, is very important. So that's about all I have for today. I think 27 minutes is pretty good to do the quarterbacks. I plan on doing the tight ends tomorrow. And maybe even if there's enough people that want to hear it, I'll do, after 4 weeks, the rankings for the defenses. So if that'll help you guys plan ahead to get your rosters, your lineups going. So anyway, that's about it. Maybe tomorrow.